Hey everyone, Dr. D here, and in this video I'm gonna address student questions. I asked my hybrid class to participate in a discussion board where they ask me questions, and I will go ahead and answer a few. So let's take a look. First student question. Within biology, what is your favorite lesson to teach and why? Actually, my favorite topic to teach is cellular respiration. It's the process of taking sugars, how our body takes sugars, and it uses that sugar energy and that fat energy in order to make ATP energy so that those ATP molecules fuel our cells. So the reason I like teaching cellular respiration, which by the way for us is chapter 7, the reason I love it so much is because it's a challenging thing to teach, and but it's really fun to teach. If you can get students engaged and you could teach it in a understandable way. I came up with my own way of teaching it, and I've never seen it taught this way. I start at the end of the process, and then I work my way to the beginning, and I came up with that, and it actually got me this job. I think one of the director of biology sat in my class one time, and she saw me teaching cellular respiration and how I taught it backwards using my own technique. And I had student engagement. And usually, keep in mind, cellular respiration is a type of subject that most professors, when they're teaching it, the students are sitting there with a completely blank look because it's so complicated, especially if you start at the beginning and work it to the end. I came up with starting at the end and working your way to the beginning, and that seems to work. Here's my analogy, right? Imagine if you have a friend who's never seen a car before, like a car, like an automobile. If you have a friend who's never even seen a car, and they ask you, "Hey, what's a car?" How would you explain the car? Imagine explaining a car starting with the gasoline, right? The gasoline that you put into the tank. Would that make a lot of sense? Would that you know foster a clear understanding of what the car is? Imagine if I said, okay, I'll tell you exactly what a car is. First, you got to take high octane uh, petroleum. You got to put it into a chamber, and then that chamber pumps the fuel into these lines, into this engine. And in the engine, the fuel gets sprayed by these coils and these fuel injectors. And then there's an ignition that happens by a spark plug. And then there's this explosion. And then the C8, H16, O8, you get my point. No one has an idea of what the car is if you start with the fuel, right? So explaining cellular respiration starting at the beginning is kind of like that. However, explaining cellular respiration starting at the end is kind of like explaining the car as a car. You say, okay, you want to know what a car is? A car is a automobile. It's a vessel with wheels. And you get inside, it has an engine and it goes and it can take you where you want to go and it rolls around. That's a lot more simple. And then you can work your way toward explaining what the engine does, how the engine powers the transmission and the wheels. And there you go. It's much more understandable if you start with the big picture, which is the car, and you're not starting with the fuel, which is an afterthought. I came up with my own way of teaching that. I'm very proud of it. In fact, when I learned cellular respiration back at San Diego State, I was completely confused. I felt like, because I tried to read the chapter a little bit ahead of time, and I got confused by the chapter, but I learned a few things, and I feel like after the lecture I had, I was even more confused about what cellular respiration was. So cellular respiration is one of those very challenging things in biology, but I feel like I can teach it in a straightforward flow of thought way, and that's why it's my favorite thing to teach. Thanks for the question. I do appreciate it. I hope I answered that question for you. So let's do maybe one more question today. Let me look for a question. Let's see. Da-da-da. Okay, here's a question. Dear Dr. D, I am very concerned about biology and its concepts. I truly don't understand the chemistry part of it. I never took chemistry. What is your suggestion for me? I work 12 hours a day and have one day set aside to study. Oof, that's rough. However, it is hard and it's hard to understand the concepts. Please help. Okay, so it looks like you're working 12 hours a day. Wow. And you only have one day to study? That is rough. I would almost say that's a recipe for disaster because if you're a science major, science majors have these big classes that have lecture components, have lab components. It's 6 hours of actual class time a week, and so it takes a lot of time. I don't know how you would possibly pull off working 12 hours a day and only one day to study. I would recalibrate. I hope you don't have a lot of classes this semester. It doesn't say anything about how many classes this student has. If you have more than 2 classes, I would think that it would almost be impossible to do that much work. That's a lot. 12 hours a day? Oh gosh, that's more than I work. But I don't know. Gosh, I, I wish you well. um, I wow. My best suggestion is if you're gonna, yeah, my best suggestion is either work less or take fewer classes because there's no wonder that you're struggling if you're trying to do all this. Students, they think they're, Superman or Superwoman. And I have, it's very sad, but so many semesters I see students try to balance 40-hour work weeks or even more, 50-hour, 60-hour work weeks, and then they also take a full load of classes, like 2, 3, 4 classes. The worst is taking multiple science classes with that. And then, a lot of times these students also have families and children. And gosh, the statistics for working students doing well and getting their associates is abysmal. I think I heard the latest statistics. It was something like only 18% of students who work full time actually get an associate's degree. So it's an uphill battle. If you're going to work 12 hours a day and be a bio major, I mean, gosh, I struggled to get my bio degree and I didn't work at all. So I don't know what you can do. Again, my best suggestion is work fewer hours or take fewer classes. Um, Study, look for opportunities to study. For example, if you're going to go and, wait in the dentist's waiting area, the patient waiting area at the dentist, you could be studying there. If you're going to go and be on a bus or something, study on the bus. If you're waiting in line somewhere, study in line. So you have to look for little opportunities to study. As far as not understanding chemistry, uh, we have a amazing resource on our campus. It's the Science Corner, and at the Science Corner, uh, they have tutors that will sit down with you for free. That is amazing. My students don't utilize it, but I don't know why. It's amazing. If I was back in college and they told me, Dr. D, oh, I wouldn't have been Dr. D back then. It would have been like, Mr. D, uh, you can go to the science corner and some paid tutor will sit down with you and explain anything you didn't understand in your class. I would be there every free moment I had. I would be there all the time. And they are open on the weekends. I think Saturday is in Sabine Hall, but Sunday is in the Learning Center. So, even on a weekend, you could come and get tutoring. So you got free tutoring at school. You've got office hours where you could patch in, remotely, using YouTube. and join the stream. You could call in. You can come in. You've got YouTube. You've got Google. You've got your textbook. You've got um, all these resources that I didn't have when I was a student. When I was a kid at San Diego State, we didn't even have YouTube. We didn't even have Google. Google did not exist when I was in college. Imagine not being able to Google something. If I didn't know something, I had to go to the library and find the book that talked about it. You know what I mean? That's hard. That's not having resources, right? But I don't want to date myself. Um, but what I would not recommend is working 12 hours a day and then committing only 1 hour to study. That's a recipe for failure. That's almost like saying, I want to set myself up to fail. And I don't want to be harsh. I don't want to be rough, but I want to give you a reality check. And the reality check is, you know, it would be hard for anyone to be doing well in that circumstance. So I hope you figure it out. Like I said, take fewer classes or work less hours. Ideally, work less hours because the jobs you're doing right now without an education are not the thing that you need to be focused on. It should be what you do to just scrape by. And if you could work fewer hours and save your money and be really efficient with it and maximize your time for study, that's what's going to pay off in the end. That's what's going to allow you to get that better job in the future and make the sacrifice worth it. So I hope that helps. Please take advantage of all the amazing resources you have on campus and all the amazing resources you have on the internet and your free textbook and all this. But yeah, I mean, don't overwhelm yourself. Students do this all the time. They try to do too much, and I'm not joking when I say I think the statistics for student success rates, who work full time is only like 18%. You know what I mean? Only less than 1 out of 5 students who work full time are going to finish, and that's the reality. And it's not because they're not committed and they're it's not because they're lazy. It's because it's like just too hard to work full time and it's just too much work. It's just like impossible, almost. So I wish you well. I wish you well. And a good question for you. I hope you take my advice. All right, well, that's it for student questions for today. I hope this helps. Every night I'll get on, answer a couple students' questions. And I hope you got some value out of this. And tune in next time.